Der Mann der Stunde.
Stef Aerts.
Dat denk ik is erop.
Weet je twee zijn kerkjaren? Eigenlijk is het waar een hele van jong ding.
Will 2023 is not just a movie, it is a question that stays with you. Hidden details and shocking facts change how you see every scene. Let's break it all down on J Film Reviews. Will is a 2023 historical war drama film made through a collaboration between Belgium and the Netherlands and Poland. The movie was written by Carl Jules, Tim Milans, and Jeroen Olislegers, with Tim Milans also serving as the director. The main cast includes Stef Aerts, Matteo Simoni, and Annelore Crollet, who play key roles in the story. The film is an adaptation of the novel Will, written by Joran Olislegers, and brings the events and themes of the book to life on screen in a dramatic and emotional way. In 1942, the local police in Antwerp were cooperating with the Nazi soldiers who had occupied the city. Many people in Antwerp strongly supported Hitler and his beliefs. They thought the country would be better if it were free of Hebrew people. Slowly, society was being brainwashed into believing that Hebrew didn't deserve to live. The Antwerp police acted as a middle layer between the German army and the local citizens. The officers were trained not to interfere in German military matters. Hitler and his planners were successful in dividing society by using the fears of ordinary people. They made them believe that Hebrew people were a danger to the nation, like a disease spreading through society. Hitler was extremely skilled at manipulation. He controlled what people heard and saw, and over time, his version of truth became accepted by the masses. However, there were still a few people who refused to be influenced and wanted to fight against this hatred. Two such men were Will and Lord, police officers who witnessed their country being consumed by hate. One night, Will and Lord went out with a German military police officer named Hermann, who was planning to arrest a man who had refused to follow orders from German command. According to the rules, a German officer needed at least two local police officers during an arrest, so Will and Lord accompanied him. During the arrest, they saw Herman violently abused, claimed, and his family, both physically and verbally, while demanding money. When Cam couldn't provide any money, the officer decided to arrest him along with his family. While they were being taken away, Kaim's wife, Mariam, found a chance to escape with her daughter and ran. The German officer chased her and eventually caught her. Will and Lord could no longer tolerate what they were seeing. They attacked Herman, killed him, and hid his body in a nearby manhole. They promised each other never to speak about the incident, knowing that discovery by the SS would mean death. Later, Gregor's cannibal from the German secret police arrived to investigate the disappearance of the soldier. There were no official records showing what happened that night. Gregor suspected Will and Lodge, so he took them to watch suspected communists being executed to observe their reactions. Soon after, Will and Lord discovered that Herman's body was no longer in the manhole. Both men became terrified. Will's family asked him to come home, fearing he might confess to the authorities. Lord had a sister named Vet, who questioned Will harshly and warned him that she would kill him herself if he betrayed her brother. Will assured her that he had no intention of doing so. An influential man named Warshifel, who had once lent money to Will's father, took a liking to Will because of his artistic talent. Will was a skilled painter, and Warshifel encouraged him to focus on his art and become successful in a land free of Hebrews. He gave Will a house to use as a workspace. Warshifel was a strong supporter of the Nazis and often took part in rallies aimed at removing Hebrews from the country. Along with his associates, Omer Verschuren and Edward, he planned to burn down a synagogue. Will secretly informed the police, who intervened in time and prevented any deaths. Will then brought the Lisk family to the house and hid them there. Lord became angry when he learned about Will's close relationship with a pro Nazi figure. However, he calmed down after realizing that Will was using his position and contacts to help save Hebrew families. Around this time, Vet introduced Will to the White Brigade, a resistance group working to protect Hebrews. Their leader, known as the Professor, asked Will to use his connections to gather information about upcoming German raids. As time passed, Will and Vet grew close and began developing feelings for each other. Although Jet was impulsive, she was deeply committed to the resistance cause, which made her respect Will even more. Will and Jet later broke into Warshafel's house and discovered that he was using information about raids to force Hebrews out of their homes. Omar would then buy those properties at very low prices. Will and Jet began using this information to warn people and prepare defenses against upcoming raids, actively working to disrupt Scannable plans. Gregor Scannable, the chief secretary of the Secret Field Police, was a dangerous and intelligent man. Warshifel told Will that he had been feeding information to Gregor years before the war, which helped him gain the officer's trust. Because of this, Gregor had also heard positive things about Will. Will attended a party with Jet and discovered that his aunt was romantically involved with Gregor. Gregor made his threatening nature clear as soon as he met Will. His unpredictable behavior made Will extremely uncomfortable. At the party, Gregor encouraged Will to drink heavily and provoked him into fighting with another German officer. While drunk, Will told the officer that he would throw him into the same canal where the missing German soldier was lying. Gregor, who had stayed sober, observed everything closely. This slip exposed Will and Lord's secret. Gregor also discovered the leader of the White Brigade and killed him in front of Will. Even then, Will refused to admit his involvement in the murder. Because of his silence, another officer named Jean was arrested and brutally tortured. Will blamed himself for getting drunk and making such a mistake, but he knew there was no turning back. He helped the Lisk family escape to Brussels after they were discovered by Warshifel, whom Will was forced to kill. Unfortunately, Gregor later found the Lisk family in Brussels and murdered them. By this time, Gregor was almost certain that Will was the traitor inside the Belgian police force. He ordered mass raids on Hebrew homes and warned Will that any betrayal would result in the death of both him and his friend. Will informed Lord and Jet about the threat and begged them not to do anything that could risk their lives. Will had accepted that having a conscience was a luxury during such brutal times. To survive, he would have to live with actions he would never be proud of. Will told Lord to wear his uniform, and together they joined the German forces during the raids. Yet overwhelmed by helplessness and pain, realized she could no longer save anyone. Unable to bear the suffering, she took her own life. Will watched the woman he loved die before his eyes. Will and Lord survived, knowing history would judge them harshly. Still, they stood by their choices, understanding that no one could truly comprehend the impossible moral struggle they faced. Detail about Will 2023 movie production. The production of Will represents a significant achievement in Belgian cinema, bringing together multiple countries and production companies to tell a complex story about moral ambiguity during the Nazi occupation of Belgium. The film's journey from development to screen showcases the collaborative nature of European filmmaking and the dedication required to bring historical narratives to life with authenticity and emotional depth. Development and pre production. The development of Will began with the celebrated novel of the same name by Flemish author Jaron Ollis, which was published and became a best selling work in Belgium and the Netherlands. The novel, titled Will in its original Dutch publication and Trouble in its French translation, offered a complex and morally nuanced portrait of life during the Nazi occupation of Antwerp in 1942. The literary work's success and critical acclaim made it an attractive property for cinematic adaptation, presenting both opportunities and challenges for filmmakers seeking to translate its psychological depth and historical complexity to the screen. Director Tim Mylands, already established as a talented director with his feature debut Patrick, which premiered in competition at the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival and won the Best Director award, emerged as the perfect choice to helm his ambitious project. Mylands had made a strong impression both in Belgian cinema and international television, having directed episodes for acclaimed series including Peaky Blinders, The Terror, and Legion. His background working on Peaky Blinders particularly positioned him well to handle the period, setting, and moral complexity that Will demanded. Patrick had demonstrated his ability to create psychologically complex character studies with unexpected tonal shifts, skills that would prove essential in adapting Hollis novel. The screenplay adaptation was handled by Carl Jones, working in collaboration with Tim Mylands and with input from the original author Jaron Ollis. The challenge facing the screenwriting team was substantial. How to condense and visualize a novel that operates largely through internal monologue and psychological examination into a cinematic narrative that would work visually while maintaining the story's moral complexity. The adaptation process required difficult decisions about which elements of sprawling novel to emphasize and which to streamline or eliminate entirely. The screenplay development focused on creating a narrative that could externalize the internal conflicts of protagonist Wilfred Wills while maintaining the novel's central themes about moral compromise, survival, and the gray areas that exist between collaboration and resistance during occupation. Unlike many World War II films that present clear moral distinctions between heroes and villains, Will needed to inhabit a more uncomfortable space where ordinary people make impossible choices under extraordinary pressure. The production was structured as a multinational co production, bringing together resources and expertise from Belgium, the Netherlands, and Poland. This collaborative European approach to financing and producing the film reflected both practical considerations and thematic appropriateness, given that the story deals with the Nazi occupation across multiple European territories. The Belgian production companies included Matteo Film, produced by Hans Evert, who was simultaneously presenting the Eight Mountains at the Cannes Film Festival. Additional Belgian co-producers included Lecter Scripted Media, Mindsmeet, and Les Films de Fleuve, demonstrating significant commitment from the Belgian film industry. The Dutch contribution came through Topkapi Films, while Polish company K&K Select Films rounded out the international partnership. This three-country collaboration necessitated careful coordination across borders while allowing the production to access talent, locations, and resources in multiple territories. The producers included Hans Evert, Guy Gojelskop, Thomas Lears, and Jan Sagers, bringing together individuals with extensive experience in both Belgian and international film production. Pre-production phase involved extensive research into the historical period, particularly focusing on the specific circumstances of Antwerp during the Nazi occupation. The production team studied archival materials, photographs, and historical accounts to ensure authenticity in recreating 1942 Antwerp. This research extended to understanding the role and function of auxiliary, auxiliary police officers during the occupation, the organization of the resistance movement, the process of Jewish persecution and deportation, and the complex web of collaboration and resistance that characterized life in occupied Belgium. Casting became a crucial element of the pre production process, with the filmmakers assembling an impressive ensemble of Belgian talent. Stef Aerts was selected for the demanding lead role of Wilfried Wills, a choice that reflected both his acting abilities and his capacity to embody the character's complexity and moral ambiguity. Matthew Simoni was cast as Lord Mattapigan, Will's colleague and friend, bringing his characteristic intensity and understated presence to the role. For the pivotal role of Jet Maddepingan, the filmmakers chose Annelore Crollet in what would be her first major film role, a bold choice that ultimately paid dividends. The supporting cast included numerous distinguished Belgian actors, creating a rich tapestry of performances. Kevin Jensen's, known for his work in international productions, joined the cast, as did veteran performers including Jan Barvots, Jan Bijvoort, Kane Devo, Els Dottermans, Jan Declaire, and Dirk Rooftoff as Felix Warscheffel. German actor Demetrius Schad was cast as Gregor Scannable, the German officer conducting investigations, while Dutch actor Per Bokma played Time Lisk. This combination of Belgian theatrical tradition, contemporary Belgian film talent, and select international actors created the foundation for the film's ensemble approach. The pre production team also included Robert Havert as director of photography, a crucial creative partnership that would define the film's visual identity. Havert's previous work had demonstrated an ability to create striking, expressive imagery, and his collaboration with Mylands would prove essential in establishing the film's visual language. Production designer and costume departments worked to recreate the period with meticulous attention to detail, researching everything from the specific uniforms worn by auxiliary police to the interiors of Antwerp homes and businesses during the occupation. The musical dimension was entrusted to composer Geert Hellings, who faced the challenge of creating a score that would support the film's complex tonal shifts between violence, intimacy, and moral reflection. The pre production discussions around music established that the score should avoid conventional heroic themes or melodramatic emphasis, instead, working more subtly to support the emotional and psychological dimensions of the narrative. Distribution arrangements were secured during the development phase with Cannes Police Film Distribution agreeing to release the film in Belgium and Paradiso handling distribution in the Netherlands. Significantly, a deal was also struck early on with Netflix for streaming rights following the theatrical release in the Benelux region, ensuring the film would eventually reach a much wider international audience than would typically be possible for a Belgian period drama. The film's budget, while not publicly disclosed in specific figures, represented a substantial investment for Belgian cinema. The multinational co production structure allowed for a larger scale than a purely Belgian production would typically command, enabling the period recreation, large cast, and extended shooting schedule that the project required. The involvement of institutions like BNP Paribas, Fortis Film Finance as associate producers indicated that the level of financial commitment and confidence in the project. Filming. Principal photography on Will commenced in May 2022 with the production scheduled to continue through mid July of that year, representing approximately 2.5 months of intensive filming. The shooting schedule reflected the ambition and scope of the project, requiring significantly more time than many contemporary Belgian films would allocate for production. This extended timeline allowed the filmmakers to approach the material with the care and attention it demanded, creating opportunities for detailed performances, complex staging, and the recreation of period specific atmosphere. The primary filming location was Antwerp itself, the city where the story is set. However, recognizing that modern Antwerp bears little resemblance to the city as it existed in 1942, the production faced significant challenges in finding locations that could convincingly represent the occupation era city. Some filming took place in Liege, another Belgian city that offered architectural and urban spaces that could more easily be transformed to represent 1940s Antwerp. The location work in Belgium involved careful scouting to identify buildings, streets, and interiors that retained period characteristics or could be dressed to appear as they would have during the war years. The production also scheduled significant filming time in Poland, a decision driven both by practical and creative considerations. Poland offered locations that could represent occupied Antwerp more convincingly than what was available in Belgium, particularly for larger street scenes and exterior sequences. Polish crews and resources also brought experience in period film production, with the Polish film industry having developed considerable expertise in recreating World War II settings. The international nature of the shoot, spanning multiple countries and requiring coordination across borders, added logistical complexity but expanded the visual possibilities available to the filmmakers. Director Tim Mylands worked closely with cinematographer Robert Havert to establish a distinctive visual approach for the film, rather than adopting the washed out, desaturated look that he has become conventional for World War II period films. The cinematography for Will employed a more complex visual strategy. The imagery combines naturalistic lighting with carefully composed frames that emphasize the characters' psychological states and the oppressive atmosphere of occupation. Havert's work creates a visual tension between the ordinary appearance of daily life and the extraordinary moral pressures faced by the characters. The filming process required meticulous attention to period detail across all departments. Costume designer worked to ensure that every character's wardrobe reflected not just the period but their specific social position, allegiances, and circumstances. The uniforms of the auxiliary police needed to be historically accurate while also being practical for the actors' physical performances. Civilian clothing required similar attention, reflecting the material shortages and rationing that characterized occupied Belgium while allowing for character differentiation. Production design extended to every visible element of the frame. Interiors were dressed with period appropriate furniture, decorative objects, and practical items. Street scenes required the removal or disguise of modern elements like contemporary street signs, lighting fixtures, and paving. Vehicles from the period were sourced and maintained for the production. The German military presence needed to be represented through authentic or carefully recreated uniforms, equipment, and insignia. The shooting schedule was structured to accommodate the film's dramatic progression through not necessarily filming in chronological order. Logistical considerations, location availability, and actor schedules all influenced the order in which scenes were captured. This non linear production approach required the actors to maintain emotional continuity across scenes shot weeks apart, demanding considerable preparation and concentration. Several sequences presented particular challenges during filming. The scenes involving violence, including the pivotal early sequence where a German soldier is accidentally killed, required careful choreography and safety protocols. The filmmakers worked with stunt coordinators to ensure that these movements would be convincing and impactful without endangering the performers. The visual, sometimes shocking violence in the film reflects conscious artistic choices to convey the brutality of the period without aestheticizing or glorifying it. Crowd scenes and sequences involving multiple extras presented logistical challenges, requiring coordination of numerous performers, period accurate clothing for each, and careful blocking to create believable environment. The recreation of 1942 Antwerp street life needed to feel organic and lived in rather than staged, requiring attention to background action and ambient details that would sell the period setting. The intimate scenes between characters demanded different challenges, requiring the actors to find emotional truth in quiet moments of connection, doubt, and moral struggle. Director Mylands worked closely with the principal cast to develop these relationships and find the right tone for scenes that needed to convey complex emotional and psychological states without becoming overly theatrical and melodramatic. Technically, considerations included the use of period, appropriate lighting sources, and techniques to maintain authenticity in interior scenes. The production utilized practical lighting whenever possible, working with natural light sources and period lighting fixtures to create believable environments. This approach required careful planning and sometimes longer setup times, but contributed significantly to the film's visual authenticity and atmospheric quality. Weather conditions during the outdoor filming in both Belgium and Poland presented both challenges and opportunities. The production schedule needed to remain flexible enough to account for changing conditions while still maintaining momentum toward completion. The cinematographer worked to incorporate natural weather variations into the visual approach using available light and atmospheric conditions to enhance the mood and texture of scenes. The sound department faced the task of capturing clean dialogue in various challenging environments while also recording ambient sound that would contribute to the period atmosphere. Location sound recording required managing traffic noise, modern aircraft, and other anachronistic sounds that would need to be eliminated or replaced in post production. Sound recordists worked closely with the director and cinematographer to capture the best possible production audio while accommodating the visual requirements of each scene. The scale of the production required a substantial crew spanning multiple departments and specializations. Beyond the core creative team, the production employed numerous technicians, craftspeople, and support personnel across grip, electric, camera, art department, makeup, hair, wardrobe, and production management. Coordinating this workforce across multiple locations and ensuring consistent quality throughout the shoot represented a significant organizational challenge handled by the production management team. As the scheduled completion date of mid July 2022 approached, the production entered the final intensive push to complete all remaining scenes. This phase likely included the capture of any pickup shots, additional coverage, or sequences that had been postponed earlier in the schedule. The conclusion of principal photography marked a major milestone but represented only one phase of the long journey to complete the film. Post production. Following the completion of principal photography in mid July 2022, Will entered an extensive post production phase that would last over a year before the film's theatrical release in September 2023. This prolonged post production period reflects both the complexity of the material and the meticulous approach taken by the filmmakers to refine every aspect of the finished work. The addition process began with assembling the massive amount of footage captured during the production. Editor Bert Jacob worked closely with the director Tim Mylands to shape the raw material into a coherent narrative. The initial assembly would have been considerably longer than the final runtime, requiring difficult decisions about pacing, structure, and which scenes or moments to retain, trim, or eliminate entirely. The editing process for a film like Will involves not just technical assembly but fundamental storytelling decisions about rhythm, emphasis, and emotional progression. One of the key challenges in editing involved balancing the film's various tonal elements. Will shifts between moments of quiet domestic intimacy, sudden explosive violence, moral deliberation, and dark absurdism. Finding the right transitions between these modes while maintaining narrative coherence and emotional continuity required sophisticated editorial choices. The editors needed to ensure that the film's more confrontational or challenging movements would land with appropriate impact without alienating the audience or undermining the character development. The structure of the narrative, which includes framing devices and shifts in chronology, required particular attention during editing. The filmmakers needed to establish how and when to reveal certain information, how to build suspense and moral tension, and how to guide the audience through a story that resists simple moral categorization. The editing rhythm needed to support the psychological realism of the characters while maintaining enough forward momentum to sustain engagement over the film's 107-minute runtime. The sound design and mixing process represented another crucial dimension of post production. Sound designer worked to create a sonic environment that would immerse viewers in 1942 Antwerp while supporting the emotional, psychological dimensions of the story. This work included replacing or enhancing production dialogue as needed, creating atmospheric ambiances for each location and scene, designing sound effects for period specific elements like vehicles and weapons, and building the overall soundscape that would complement the visual imagery. The sound mix needed to balance multiple competing demands, ensuring dialogue clarity and intelligibility, creating immersive environmental ambiances supporting the dramatic impact of key moments through sound effects and design, and integrating the musical score into the overall sonic structure. The mix also need to work across different playback systems from large theatrical presentations to home viewing environments, maintaining its effectiveness and impact regardless of how audiences would ultimately experience the film. Composer Gerd Hellings developed and recorded the musical score during the post production, working in close collaboration with the director to identify where music should support the narrative and where it should remain absent. The score needed to enhance the emotional and psychological dimensions of the story without overwhelming the natural performances or becoming manipulative. Helling's compositions work to create atmosphere and emotional resonance while respecting the complexity and ambiguity of the material, avoiding the conventional, heroic, or melodramatic musical approaches often found in World War II films. Visual effects work, while not extensive compared to contemporary blockbuster productions, still represented an important aspect of post production. VFX artists worked to remove modern elements from location shots, enhance period details, creating establishing shots of 1942 Antwerp through digital matte paintings and composition, and address any technical issues or continuity problems that emerged during filming. The goal was to make these interventions invisible, supporting the period authenticity without calling attention to themselves. Color grading represented another crucial post production phase. The colorist worked with the cinematographer Robert Havert and director Tim Mylands to establish the final look of the film. This process involved adjusting the color palette to support the emotional tone of different scenes and sequences, ensuring visual consistency across footage shot in different locations and lighting conditions, enhancing enhancing the period feel through color choices and creating visual distinction between different narrative threads or time periods within the story. The color grading choices for will avoid the heavily desaturated blue tinted approach that has become conventional for historical dramas, instead opting for a more complex and varied palette that reflects the complexity of the narrative and characters. The visual approach supports the film refusal to present simple moral categories with the color work contributing to the overall aesthetic strategy of showing how ordinary life continues even under extraordinary circumstances. Quality control and technical review processes ensured that the film met all necessary technical standards for theatrical and streaming distribution. This included checking for any technical errors, continuity issues, or problems with audio or visual quality that might have slipped through earlier review processes. The filmmakers also worked to create versions of film suitable for different distribution contexts, including versions with different aspect ratios or technical specifications as needed. The creation of subtitles and dubbed versions began during this phase, with the film being prepared for international distribution. Given that Netflix would be handling global distribution after the theatrical release, versions needed to be prepared with subtitles in multiple languages and audio dub tracks for key markets. This work required careful translation that would preserve not just the literal meaning, but the tone and nuance of the original Dutch dialogue. Throughout the post production process, the filmmakers likely conducted test screenings with select audiences to gauge reactions and identify areas that might benefit from refinement. These screenings provide valuable feedback about pacing, clarity, and emotional impact and overall effectiveness. While maintaining their artistic vision, the filmmakers could use this feedback to make adjustments that would enhance the film accessibility and impact without compromising its integrity. The marketing materials, including trailers, posters, and promotional assets, were developed during this period. The challenge here involved representing the film accurately while making it appealing to potential audiences. The marketing needed to convey the period, setting, and World War II context while also communicating that this was a more psychologically complex and morally ambiguous story than typically war films. As the post production phase concluded in mid 2023, the film entered final technical review and delivery preparations. Master were created for different distribution formats, including theatrical, DCP, digital cinema package, streaming, deliverable for Netflix, and any other required formats. The lengthy post production process, lasting approximately 14 months from the end of the principal photography to release, reflects the care and attention devoted to every aspect of the finished film. Music. The musical score for Will, composed by Geert Hellings, represents an integral component of the film's artistic achievement, working in subtle but powerful ways to support the narrative's psychological complexity and emotional resonance. Hellings faced the considerable challenge of creating music that would enhance the story without falling into the conventional approaches typically associated with World War II cinema or overwhelming the naturalistic performances and carefully crafted visual design. Helling's approach to scoring will demonstrates sophisticated understanding of when to employ music and when to allow scenes to play without musical um, accompaniment. The film features extended sequences with no score, allowing the ambient sound design and dialogue to carry the emotional weight. This selective use of music makes the movements when the score does appear more impactful and meaningful. The composer recognized that constant musical underlining would work against the film's aesthetic goals and its commitment to presenting moral ambiguity without easy emotional manipulation. The musical palette employed in the score avoids the sweeping romantic or heroic orchestrations common in period war films. Instead, Hellings crafted a more intimate and psychologically focused sonic landscape. The instrumentation choices reflects this approach with the composer utilizing chamber orchestra forces rather than full symphonic resources. This more restrained instrumental approach creates music that feels personal and interior, supporting the film's focus on individual moral struggle rather than grand historical sweep. The thematic material developed for the score works to illuminate the psychological and emotional states of the characters without prescribing how audiences should respond to their choices rather than creating distinct themes that would clearly identify heroic or villainous characters. Hellings developed more ambiguous musical materials that can be transformed and recontextualized as circumstances and moral positions shift throughout the narrative. This musical ambiguity mirrors the film thematic concerns with the gray areas between collaboration and resistance. The score incorporates period appropriate musical elements without becoming a pastiche or overly nostalgic recreation of 1940s music. There are subtle references to the musical styles and forms that would have been heard during the period, but these are integrated into a contemporary compositional approach. This balance allows the music to evoke the period while maintaining a perspective that acknowledges distance from these events and their ongoing relevance. One of the key functions of Helling's score is to create and sustain tension and unease throughout the film. The music often works to suggest threat, paranoia, and moral discomfort using harmonic language and orchestration that creates a sense of instability and danger. This approach supports the narrative depiction of occupation as a condition of constant surveillance, suspicion, and risk, where any action might have deadly consequences. The score also provides crucial emotional support for the more intimate moments between characters, particularly the relationship between Will and Jed. Here, the music must navigate the challenge of supporting genuine emotional connection while acknowledging the compromised circumstances under which these relationships exist. The composer crafts musical materials that allow for warmth and intimacy without sentimentality, recognizing that even moments of connection occur within a context of larger moral crisis. For the film's movements of violence and confrontation, Helling makes careful choices about musical response. Rather than emphasizing these movements with aggressive or bombastic scoring, the music often works more obliquely, sometimes pulling back to allow the sound designed to dominate, or providing musical commentary that complicates rather than reinforces the visual violence. This approach prevents the violence from becoming thrilling or cathartic, maintaining the film's commitment to showing the true cost and horror of these acts. The score's relationship to editing and pacing deserves particular attention. Hellings worked closely with director Tim Mylands and editor Bert Jacob to ensure that musical cues would integrate seamlessly with the film's rhythm and flow. The placement and duration of musical cues was carefully calibrated to support the editing choices while allowing the music breathing room to develop its ideas. This collaboration between composer, director, and editor resulting in a score that feels organic to the film rather than imposed upon it. The recording of the score likely involved sessions with skilled musicians capable of bringing the necessary emotional depth and technical precision to the performances. The quality of musical execution contributes significantly to the score's effectiveness, with the performers bringing human warmth and expression to the composed materials. The recording and mixing of the score needed to ensure that the music would integrate properly to the overall sound mix, sitting alongside dialogue, effects, and ambience without overwhelming or being overwhelmed by these other sonic elements. Helling's work on Will demonstrates the composer's ability to serve the needs of challenging, complex material while maintaining a distinctive artistic voice. The scores avoids drawing obvious attention to itself, instead working as a vital but unobstructive element of the total cinematic experience. For viewers fully engaged with the film, the music works on a subconscious level, shaping emotional response and psychological engagement without becoming the focus of conscious attention. The score also needed to function across the film shifts between different modes and tones. The film's occasional movements toward dark absurdism or Godskok comedy required musical responses that would support these tonal shifts without undermining the overall seriousness of the material. Halling's score navigates these transitions with subtlety and skill, helping to integrate the film's disparate tonal elements into a coherent whole. In the context of contemporary film music, Halling's score for Will represents a thoughtful alternative to the bombastic, over emphatic approach that dominates much mainstream scoring. The composer, restraint, psychological insight, and sophisticated understanding of music's role in supporting rather than dominating cinematic narrative results in a score that enhances the film's considerable artistic achievements. While it may not be the kind of score that exists independently as a popular concert, work, or album experience within the context of the film, it performs its function with intelligence and artistry. Release. The release strategy for Will involved a carefully planned progression from theatrical premieres in Belgium and the Netherlands to eventual global streaming availability via Netflix. This multiple stage approach aimed to maximize the film's reach while respecting traditional theatrical windows and allowing the film to build critical and audience response before its wider release. Theatrical. The theatrical release of Will began on September 27, 2023, when the film opened in cinemas across Belgium. This premiere represented the culmination of the production team efforts and provided the first opportunity for Belgian audiences to experience the completed work on the big screen. The choice of late September for the release positioned the film at the beginning of the fall awards season while avoiding the more crowded summer months dominated by international blockbusters. The Belgian release was handled by Cannes Police Film Distribution, one of the country's major exhibitors and distributors. Cannes Police operates numerous cinemas throughout Belgium and the wider region, providing significant screen across for the film. The company's involvement ensured that Will would receive prominent placement in Belgian theaters and marketing support to reach the target audience. The distributor's commitment to the films reflected confidence in the both its artistic merits and commercial potential within the Belgian market. The following day, September 28, 2023, the film opened in the Netherlands through distributor Paradiso. This nearly simultaneous release in the two countries reflected the film's status as a Benelux co production and the cultural and the linguistic connections between Flemish Belgium and the Netherlands. Dutch audiences could engage with the film in their own language without subtitles or dubbing, making it accessible to the same extent as for the Belgian viewers. The theatrical release strategy focused on art house and quality cinema venues rather than attempting wide commercial distribution. This approach recognized Will's challenging subject matter, moral complexity, and unflinching depiction of violence would appeal primarily to more sophisticated audiences seeking substantial dramatic content rather than mainstream entertainment. The film's runtime of 107 minutes positioned it as a moderate length feature that could be programmed relatively flexibly by exhibitors. Marketing materials for the theatrical release emphasized the film's prestigious literary source, the, the acclaimed director and production team, and the ensemble cast of respected Belgian performers. Promotional campaigns utilized traditional advertising channels, including posters, trailers, television spots, and print media coverage. The marketing needed to communicate the film's serious artistic ambitious while also making it accessible to audiences who might be intimidated by period drama or moral complex narratives. Critical screenings and press previews preceded the public release, generating initial reviews and media coverage that would influence audience interest. The filmmakers and principal cast participated in press conferences, interviews, and promotional appearances to support the release. These promotional activities helped build awareness and provided context for audiences about the production, the historical setting, and the filmmaker's attentions. The theatrical run allowed the film to be experienced as intended on large screens with high quality projection and sound systems. The cinematography and sound design had been crafted specifically for theatrical presentation, and experiencing the film in cinemas provided the optimal viewing conditions to appreciate these technical and artistic achievements. The communal nature of theatrical viewing also contributed to the impact of the film's more challenging movements, with audience reactions becoming part of the experience. Box office, box office performance during the theatrical window, while not publicly detailed in extensive figures, appears and to have been respectable for Belgian period drama. The film benefited from positive reviews and word of mouth, though it faced inevitable competition from larger international releases and the general challenges facing theatrical distribution in the post pandemic environment. The theatrical run established the film's critical reputation and created the foundation for its subsequent wider release through streaming. The limited international theatrical distribution beyond Belgium and the Netherlands reflected practical realities about the commercial viability of Dutch language period dramas in markets where the language would require subtitles and cultural context might be less familiar to the audiences. However, the theatrical phase served its purpose in establishing the film's artistic credentials and creating awareness that would benefit the subsequent Netflix release. Festival screenings and special presentations provided additional theatrical exhibition opportunities beyond the standard commercial release. While Will didn't premiere at major international film festivals like Cannes, Berlin, or Venice, it likely relieves screenings at specialized events focused on European cinema, historical drama, or Belgian or Dutch films culture. These festival presentations helped build the film's profile within the international film community and generated additional critical attention. Home media. The home media release strategy for Will centered on its acquisition and global distribution by Netflix, representing a significant expansion of the film's potential audience beyond what would have been possible through traditional physical media or limited theatrical distribution alone. The streaming platform's involvement had been secured early in the production process, providing additional financial support and guaranteeing international exposure for the completed film. Netflix release will globally on January 31st, 2024, approximately 4 months after the theatrical premiere in Belgium and the Netherlands. This window is allowed the film to complete its theatrical run in those markets while not delaying the international release so long that momentum and interest would dissipate. The January release date positioned the film at the beginning of the calendar year, a period when streaming services often release prestigious dramatic content that might factor into awards consideration for the following year. For its Netflix release, the film was retitled in some markets from Will to Will, adding an extra letter to make the title more immediately recognizable and pronounceable for English speaking audiences. This minor adjustment reflected Netflix's global distribution strategy and its efforts to make the film accessible across different linguistic and cultural contexts. The streaming platform created extensive subtitle options in over 30 languages, ensuring that the film could reach audiences worldwide regardless of their native language. In addition to subtitles, Netflix commissioned dubbed versions in multiple languages, including English, Spanish, Turkish, German, Hindi, Italian, Czech, and Portuguese. These dubbed versions required careful work by voice actors to match the performances of the original cast while making the dialogue accessible to viewers who prefer dubbed content to subtitles. The availability of these multiple language options significantly expanded the film's potential audience compared to what would have been possible with subtitles alone. The technical presentation on Netflix utilized high definition streaming with the film available in HD and potentially 4K resolution depending on user subscription levels and technical capabilities. The streaming platform's technical infrastructure ensured that the film's cinematography and sound design would be presented with reasonable fidelity, though obviously not matching the quality possible in theatrical presentation. Netflix also provided audio description tracks for visually impaired viewers, reflecting commitment to accessibility. The Netflix release included supporting materials such as promotional imagery, trailer, and scripted text to help audiences discover and understand the film. The streaming platforms, recommendation algorithms, and featured placement determined much of the film's visibility to the subscribers. Being featured on Netflix homepage or included in curated collections significantly impacted how many viewers would discover and watch the film versus it being buried in the platform's extensive catalog. The timing of the Netflix release proved significant for expanding the film's reach and critical conversation. Many international film critics and viewers who would not have had access to the theatrical release in Belgium could now engage with the film, generating a second wave of reviews and discussion in late January and early February 2024. This renewed attention helped sustain interest in the film and brought it to the attention of audiences interested in World War II cinema, European drama, and sophisticated historical narratives. The streaming release allowed viewers to engage with the film according to their own schedules and viewing preferences, pausing or rewatching sections as desired. This flexibility represented both an opportunity and a challenge. While more accessible than theatrical viewing, the home viewing environment potentially diminishes some of the film's impact, particularly its visual violence and psychological intensity. The filmmakers had to accept that many viewers would experience the work under less than optimal conditions, perhaps on smaller screens with mediocre sound systems and potential interruptions. Netflix's global reach meant that the film found in audiences in markets that would never have received theatrical distribution, including Latin America, Asia, Africa, and beyond the traditional art house markets of Western Europe and North America. This truly international distribution allowed the film to reach viewers in countries with their own experiences of occupation, collaboration, and moral compromise during wartime, potentially creating resonances and connections that might not have been anticipated during production. The streaming platforms, data collection, and viewing analytics provided the filmmakers and producers with information about how audience en- engaged with the film, including completion rates, rewatch behavior, and demographic information about viewers. While these metrics don't capture artistic impact or cultural significance, they offer insights into how the film performed in the streaming marketplace and whether it found its intended audience reception. The reception of Will encompassed critical response, audience reactions, and commercial performance across both its theatrical release in Belgium and Netherlands and its subsequent global streaming premiere on Netflix. The film's complex, morally ambiguous approach to World War II history generated discussion and divided opinion among critics and viewers. Box office. The box office performance of Will during its theatrical release in Belgium and the Netherlands reflected the realities of distributing a challenging domestic drama in relatively small markets. While specific financial figures were not widely publicized, the film's commercial performance can be understood within the context of Belgian cinema and the particular challenges facing period dramas in the contemporary theatrical marketplace. Belgian cinema operates on a much smaller scale than major film industries like Hollywood, France, or the United Kingdom. The entire Belgian theatrical market generates relatively modest annual box office revenues compared to the larger countries, and domestic Belgian films typically capture only a small percentage of the total market share. Within this context, Will represented a relatively ambitious and well founded production that aimed for both critical respect and reasonable commercial success without expecting blockbuster returns. The film opened in Belgian theaters on September 27, 2023, securing placement in quality cinemas operated by distributor Kinepolis across the country. Initial weekend performance likely generated modest but respectable attendance within the film, appealing primarily to adults interested in serious drama and historical subjects. The opening weekend would have established the baseline of the film commercially trajectory with subsequent weeks depending on word of mouth, critical reviews, and competition from other releases. The Dutch release the following day expanded the potential audience significantly, with the Netherlands representing a larger market than Belgium alone. Dutch audiences had access to the film without language barriers, though they would be viewing a story specifically focused on Belgian experiences during the occupation. The combined Benelux theatrical release allowed the film to amortize marketing costs across two connected markets while building critical mass of awareness and discussion. Casting. The casting process of Will 2023, a Belgian Dutch Polish co production directed by Tim Mylands, played a pivotal role in bringing to life the morally complex world of Nazi occupied Antwerp in 1942, adapted from Jaron Ledger's acclaimed novel. The film required actors capable of portraying nuanced characters, navigating collaboration, resistance, and survival. The casting department, led by Alan Van Arshoot as casting director and assisted by Alexandra Cognat, assembled by a predominantly Flemish ensemble renowned for their depth in dramatic roles, ensuring authenticity in language, accent, and emotional restraint typical of Belgian cinema. At the heart of film is Stef Aerts as Wilfred Wills, the young auxiliary policeman torn between duty and conscience. Aerts, known for his introspective performances in series like The Day and the films such as Belgica, was selected for his ability to convey internal turmoil through subtle facial expressions and wide eyed vulnerability. His portrayal of Will, a man who starts an idealistic newcomer to the police force but gradually compromises for survival, demanded an actor who could embody quiet desperation without overt histrionics. Reviewers frequently praised Art's stellar performance. Nothing how his frozen, haunted gaze mirrors the character's moral paralysis amid escalating atrocities such as participating in Jewish roundups while secretly aiding the resistance. Opposite Arts in Matteo Simoni as Lord Matabingan, Will's colleague and brother-in-law figure, whose bolder resistance creates tension in their partnership. Simoni, a versatile Flemish star from projects like The Racer and Marina, brings charisma and impulsiveness to load, contrasting Art's restraint. The chemistry between the two leads was crucial, as their early scenes involve a shared traumatic incident killing abusive German officer during a raid that blinds them in secrecy. Casting directors sought actors with prior collaborative experience in Belgian productions to foster this natural camaraderie evident in their own screen dynamic as two young officers forced into impossible choices. Annelore Crollet portrays Jet, Matt Bingham, Lord's sister, and Will's romantic interest, adding emotional layers to the narrative. Crollet's casting highlighted the need for a performer who could depict quiet strength and eventual tragic sacrifice. Her background in theatre and Belgian TV allowed her to deliver a grounded, empathetic performance, with critics highlighting her as one of the film's standout elements for elevating heartbreaking sequences, including her selfless act to delay a raid. Supporting roles feature veteran Flemish actors to lend gravitas and historical weight. Dirk Roofthoff plays Felix Warschfeld, known as Mean Bird or Angry Bird, a virulent collaborator and former mentor to Will. Roofthoff's imposing presence and nuanced villainy, blending intellectual pretension with fanaticism, make him chilling antagonist. His selection drew from his extensive career in films like The Memory of a Killer, ensuring the character embodies the intellectual allure of collaboration. Kevin Jensen's appear in a key role, bringing physical intensity and moral ambiguity, while Con DeVoe and Jan Bejo portray authoritative figures within the police hierarchy. Bijvi, as the commanding officer, Jean provides cynical wisdom, reflecting the compromised reality of the local forces under occupation. Al Dotterman's Pierre Bokma round out the ensemble with supporting turns that add familial and societal pressure. Dimitrij Scott stand out as a German officer, his casting introducing an outsider perspective with unsettling detachment. The casting extended to numerous smaller roles and extras to populate the occupied cityscape, including uncredited parts like communists and neighbors. Ruth Bastiansen and Johnson Cashiers fill minor but atmospheric positions, contributing to the film's dense, lived in feel. The decision to cast primarily Belgian actors ensured linguistic authenticity. Flemish dialogue for locals, German for occupiers, avoiding the pitfalls of accented performance common in international World War II dramas. Alien World Arshot's role as casting director involved scouting talent familiar with the novel's themes of grey morality, drawing from Flanders' tight knit acting community. Alexandra Cognat contributions focused on precision in matching physical types to 1940s archetypes while prioritizing emotional range. This approach resulted in an ensemble where an even brief appearance feel authentic, enhancing the film's exploration of complicity. The makeup and costume departments con- collaborative closely with casting to transform actors into period appropriate figures. Kajay Van Damme's makeup and hair design, including special effects for injuries and aging, complemented the cast's natural figures. The wardrobe team, supervised by figures like Mathilde Charlotte Goethals, outfitted the actors in muted era specific clothing that underscored class and occupation differences. Stunt performers, coordinated by Nicholas and others, supported action heavy sequences involving raids, confrontations, allowing principal actors to focus on dramatic beats. The camera department's close up style demanded cast members uncomfortable with intense chronicity, a criterion met by the selected Flemish talents. Overall, the casting choices prioritized subtlety over spectacle, aligning with Myland's vision of a tragic force, examining Belgian history without judgment by assembling actors adept at internal conflict. The team created performances that provoke reflection on survival instincts, making the ensemble a cornerstone of the film's impact. The result is a cast that not only inhabits their roles convincingly but also amplifies the story's uncomfortable questions about collaboration and resistance in occupied Europe. The depth of supporting cast further enriches secondary storylines. For instance, the portrayal of Jewish families during raids relied on careful casting for brief, poignant scenes that humanized the victims without exploitation. Actors in these roles were chosen for their ability to convey fear, dignity, and limited screen time, heightening the protagonist's dilemmas. Veterans like Jen Declaire, through in smaller capacities, provide anchoring presence, their familiar faces to Belgian audiences, evoking national introspection. The international co production elements influenced minor castings with Polish contributions, in crew extending to some extras for authenticity in deportation sequences. Critics and audiences alike noted how the casting avoided Hollywood tropes, opting for relatable flawed individuals over heroic archetypes. This grounded approach, facilitated by Van Arshoot and Cocknut, ensure the film resonates as a distinctly Belgian reckoning with World War II complicity. Extras and day players drawn from the local talent pools fill crowds in razzia scenes. Their reactions, fear, indifference, opportunism, crafted through directed but naturalistic casting. Ultimately, the casting department's meticulous work yields an ensemble where every face contributes to the oppressive atmosphere, proving instrumental in translating all Sledger's prose to screen. The actors' collective restraint amplifies the film's power, inviting viewers to ponder their own potential choices in similar darkness.